Hi, I'm Peter Marshall. I'm a psychologist interested in the maximisation of all human potential and a specialist in the subject of gifted children. This series of videos is designed to give you a rapid understanding of the basics of the latter subject. In this first module, you will learn about what giftedness means, how people tend to think about it, why it should concern educationalists and policymakers, and how it is identified. Giftedness is a term which it would seem was originally coined to denote superior general intelligence in 1919 by psychologist Guy Whipple, arguably the first psychologist to give adequate recognition of the special problems involved in the education of children of very high IQ. However, its use has become widened so that by the present day people use it to describe different kinds of abilities which are seen as superior in a variety of ways. After first making some comments on the problems this poses for scientific research in this area, I will survey the various ways it now tends to be used in the literature and also look at some related concepts. There's a considerable lack of consensus about how giftedness should be defined and how it should be measured. Many different definitions are in common use. The lack of agreement on definition makes comparisons difficult and can lead to spurious inferences. Worse still, this concept is a value-laden one and is, therefore, likely to influence researchers using it in respect of the data they collect and how they interpret the findings. When science was in its infancy, Francis Bacon, founder of the Royal Society, laid down a fundamental principle for scientific investigation, namely that scientists should consciously seek to avoid bias. The philosopher's role in science he saw as that of pointing out the pitfalls, and this he did, identifying 4 categories. His labels for these will seem rather inappropriate to the modern reader, but bear with me and you will see his reasoning. He called them idols of the tribe, idols of the cave, idols of the marketplace, and idols of the theatre. The first of these, idols of the tribe, refers to a tendency of people to let their senses, feelings, and received beliefs guide their thinking. He labelled this so because this tendency is rooted in the human species as a whole, which Bacon conceptualized as a tribe, for the purpose of his argument. Idols of the cave refers to a tendency for people to allow their personal disposition, viewpoints, and theories to restrict their thinking. The term is an allusion to the cave simile in Plato's work entitled The Republic. Idols of the marketplace refers to errors of deduction or induction due to language effects, such as ambiguity and misleading words. This trap was labelled so because the source of distortion it refers to arises from social interaction. And idols of the theatre refers to errors due to extrapolating from faulty theory, for example, theory based on inadequate evidence. Like theatre plays, they present an unreal view of the world. I would submit that the use of the term giftedness in scientific theory leads us into at least the first 3 and possibly also the 4th of these traps. In the case of the first trap, the term gifted is value charged and has strong emotional associations. The second trap threatens research in this area too. There's a dichotomy of values and associations attached to the concept. To those identified as intellectually gifted and to their parents, giftedness is a highly positive thing, something that should be treasured and encouraged. However, to many intellectually non-gifted people, to their parents, to egalitarianist educationalists, and even to some non-gifted parents of gifted children, giftedness is a potential source of envy and or fear, and may be seen as a means of unfair privilege. The third of such pitfalls, for example that regarding ambiguity, also poses a threat when researchers use the term gifted. There is a great lack of agreement as to what the concept means, and, moreover, the range of conceptions is too wide to make valid comparisons very feasible. The apparent failure to adequately take into account this conceptual problem threatens to, and probably does, lead researchers into the trap of making spurious inferences. To provide some idea of the different ways the concept is being used, here are some examples. Crocker, in 1984, distinguished between three kinds of giftedness. Giftedness in one subject in relation to others, giftedness in relation to peers, and giftedness defined by IQ score. Phyllis Pickard, who was one of the founder members of the National Association of Gifted Children, defined it in purely IQ terms as giftedness is defined as the upper end of the normal distribution of intelligence, the highest 2% of children judged by ability to acquire and manipulate concepts. Has prodigy anything to do with giftedness? Well, Feldman in 1986 argued that, at least in American eyes, prodigy has become absorbed into the concept of intellectual giftedness. Prodigy, however, is a term which is conferred on the basis of precocious achievement rather than potential. If it had become an essential component of giftedness in American eyes, as Feldman says, then it would rule out hidden giftedness and underachievement. Giftedness can lead to prodigy, but it's not a sufficient condition for it. Goldsmith in 1991 argued that the development of prodigy requires extraordinary environmental support. Nor may giftedness necessarily be an essential condition. The talents of child prodigies tend to be specific to a particular area, for example music or mathematics, and they are not necessarily accompanied by such high ability in all intellectual areas. Freeman in 1985 pointed out that giftedness is only meaningful in a comparative way. A child is never termed gifted without reference to others. Furthermore, population norms are context related, for example, related to age and community. A child may be considered gifted in primary school because its performance is superior to the others in that school. However, when it moves into the secondary school, its performance may not be so impressive by comparison with the other children. Not only may this be due to the effects of a larger population than was the case at the child's primary school, but also to the fact that the child may not respond so well to the secondary school curriculum as it did to that of the primary school. Renzulli in 1978 pointed out that definitions have become more liberal since the 1960s, so that giftedness is sometimes used to describe non-intellectual talents like creative and social skills. So diverse is the use of the term that Freeman reports that it tends to be applied in one form or another to up to 1 in 4 children. The great lack of comparability that such liberalisation of use gives to this term, the casualness with which it's applied, and the wide range of associations people form with it, makes new studies just deepen the confusion and mystique of knowledge in this field. Consequently, they may well lead us further away from any real understanding rather than closer to it. Furthermore, it may well lead non-scientist teachers to make spurious inferences from research findings where they fail to appreciate that the concept used in a particular research report is not quite the same as that upon which their own endeavours are focused. Giftedness has been variously defined in terms of demonstrated achievement or potential for achievement. The yearbook for the National Society for the Study of Education defined giftedness as where performance in a potentially valuable line of human activity is consistently remarkable. Here's another example. The Portland Public Schools defined it as those including approximately the upper 10% of the most intellectually talented pupils and also the same proportion of the most talented in each of several special aptitudes: art, music, creative writing, creative dramatics, creative dance, mechanical talent, and social leadership. The Marlin Report in 1971 defined it in terms of demonstrated achievement and/or potential ability, and in a definition that blurs any distinction between giftedness and talentedness, it is specified as potential in any one or more of the following areas: general intellectual ability, specific academic aptitude, creative or productive thinking, visual or performing arts, leadership, or psychomotor ability. Renzulli defines giftedness as an interaction among three basic clusters of human traits, these clusters being above average general ability, high levels of task commitment, and high levels of creativity. Gifted and talented children are those possessing or capable of developing this composite set of traits and applying them to any potentially valuable area of human performance. There is an argument for including environmental factors to the other attributes of gifted definitions. It seems natural and logical to include the material advantages a child starts out with as gift, as they are given by people, arguably even more so than intelligence. It must be acknowledged that this kind of reasoning is an illustration of a problem associated with the use of this term. It can easily lead the user to think about the issue in a particular way, for example, emphasizing inequality and privilege. Nevertheless, these factors are included in Tannenbaum's psychosocial definition, along with various personality factors that have a bearing on achievement and also the influence of chance. Sternberg and Davidson in 1986 defined gifted individuals as distinguished by the style of processing they use, and this is indicated by the way they plan, execute, and monitor tasks. Vernon in 1983 described gifted individuals' cognitive processing difference from that of non-gifted individuals in terms of their higher IQ giving them faster cognitive processing speed. This enabled them to acquire more information in a given time, and that this in turn will enhance IQ, and so the cycle goes on. Schofield and Ashman in 1987 drew attention to the superior high-level processing ability found in gifted children in their dual model. They argued that high-level planning requires simultaneous processing and low-level planning successive processing. They found gifted individuals do better on the first of these than above average, though not gifted individuals. They found no differences between the two groups on low-level planning, however. Writing in 1991, Freeman distinguished gifted children in terms of memory, perception, and attention. She pointed out that gifted children are distinguished by their high memory ability, concentration, sensitivity, and perceptual speed. The more emotionally well-balanced of these use relatively efficient learning and thinking methods. Waterhouse, in 1988, reported that they are distinguished by a special kind of brain organization, and this gives them superior ability to store and use representations. This involves some kind of special configuration of the sensory or polymodal cortex. In China, Zhao Zizhu, writing in 1985, plotted 5 characteristic features of what she calls supernormal children. They have strong cognitive interests and intellectual curiosity, concentrated attention and good memory, both long and short term, keen perception and power of observation, quick thinking, good comprehension and creativity, confidence and competitiveness, and persistence. Hadamard in 1945 found that eminent mathematicians are distinguished by their cognitive style. In particular, the fact that they nearly all avoid mental words, algebraic or precise signs, using instead vague images. He states that their mental pictures are more frequently visual, but may also be kinetic. Kretetsky in 1976 distinguished mathematical gifteds from others in the following ways. They review problems both analytically and synthetically. They're quick to generalize content and method. They exhibit early curtailment They think in a flexible way, switching between cognitive processes, and they do not adhere to techniques found unsuccessful in the past. They look for simple solutions. They can easily reverse their train of thought. They investigate different aspects of problems before trying to solve them. They tend to remember the generalized curtailed structures of problems and solutions, and they tend to tire less in mathematics than other children. Marjoram and Nelson in 1985 reported that they found children who were mathematically gifted worked faster and had better memories than others. They also thought about maths in a qualitatively different way and had some of the problem-solving skills you would expect to find in adult mathematicians. Poincare, in 1952, distinguished two types of mathematicians, the logical and the intuitive. Studies have shown that there are a variety of types of superior ability, and different researchers have focused on different types of gift. Rennes in 1953 and Shutter in 1968 focused on musical giftedness. The latter pointed out that it takes time to practice, and so this gift may not always be developed. I would argue that it also takes money, and this may be an equally important reason. Researchers also talk of social giftedness. Some people are outstandingly effective speakers and/or leaders, and along with gifts of unusual empathy and moral judgment, these might be regarded as representing social giftedness. Is this associated with intellectual giftedness? Abrams in 1985 argues that there is no conclusive evidence yet that these two are related. However, she points out that few studies have yet been done in this area. Lewis and Michelson in 1985 urged researchers to go beyond this and seek to discover what, if any, associations there are between giftedness and such things as sensory responsiveness, emotional expressivity, attention and memory capacity, and social and family relations. Sometimes people are particularly gifted in one or more faculties, but handicapped in others, a syndrome which Teresia in 1985 called dysynchrony. Other researchers have shown that there are people who are clearly superior in respect of a specific ability, for example, music ability, but who are severely subnormal in every other mental faculty, with IQ levels usually between 40 and 80. These are now referred to as monosavants. It may be their lack of general intelligence that facilitates their superior special ability, for some writers report that they lack the ability to appreciate meanings in their performance or to reflect on how they do it. This, together with an inability to comprehend negative feedback, leads them free to concentrate their mental powers in a tunnel vision kind of way. Not only can individuals be gifted in respect of one mental faculty, while all their others are severely below the average, but they may be gifted on one trait only when it is used in a particular way. An example of this is the case of some autistic children who demonstrate the most impressive ability to remember superficial facts, but when questioned about the semantic meanings underlying them, it's found that they have not comprehended them to any useful level. There are also children who are identified as gifted and treated so, but who in fact have no superior level of ability in any way. Such children have been identified as gifted on the basis of displayed behaviour patterns, conventionally associated with gifted children. For example, precocious reading and being difficult to cope with. Moreover, some of the main behaviour patterns concerned have been shown by relatively recent research to amount to faulty generalizations. One study involved children whose parents had joined the NAGC because their children had displayed behaviour which they believed to be due to gifted ability. However, Freeman in 1991 reported that she found that 5.4% of such children, when tested, were not gifted at all by her criteria, which at IQ 130 plus was rather on the liberal side as it was, compared with other researchers. Some writers have included a wide range of non-intellectual personal factors, and even included factors extrinsic to the individual, like social background and chance, as necessary before an individual can properly be described as gifted. There are also people who demonstrate no particular gifts in isolation other than high ability to succeed according to conventional yardsticks in the contemporary world, that is, economically. Could we regard this as real achievement giftedness? Is it sensible to talk about latent giftedness, or gifted but slow individuals who learn slowly, but once they have the knowledge and skill, are capable of using it to a superior degree to others? Reisman, writing in 1962, found that there are slow gifted children, but once they learn concepts, they use them in a relatively penetrating way. However, this could easily be explained in terms of hidden gifts and underachievement due to various combinations of environmental and personal factors. This subject is dealt with more extensively in later modules. How giftedness should be defined really depends on the use to which the concept is to be put. If that use is prediction, or mainly so, then perhaps the more enlarged and sophisticated the model the better, including such things as material advantage, would arguably be justified, since it would enhance the predictive power of measures. However, if the focus is instead child-centered, then trait-specific definitions are more desirable, but there would really be no more justification in limiting the term to superiority in intelligence than for superiority in any other trait, for example creativity, physical talent or leadership. As has already been argued, in my view, it has been an unsuitable term for psychological inquiry from the start because it emphasizes privilege rather than difference. This, together with the considerable ambiguity, renders it of questionable value for scientific inquiry. Nevertheless, it will be used in this series because almost all of the studies of children with IQs at least 2 standard deviations above the mean have employed the term, and to deviate from this practice in this lecture would only serve to add to the ambiguity to which I have referred. The categories of bias threat which the use of the term poses on any study were examined earlier. The best that can be done to guard against the first and second of these, while still utilizing the term, is for the user of the term to ensure that they have a thorough understanding of the various forms these threats take. One of the purposes here is to demonstrate that this is the case. The third of the bias threats dealt with earlier can be ruled out by careful definition of the concept used. When the term is used in this work, it's meant to denote intellectual ability at least 2 standard deviations above the mean, as measured by IQ testing. I'm Dr. Peter Marshall, author of Educating a Gifted Child. I hope you found this helpful and that you'll subscribe to the channel by pressing the subscribe button. Subscription is free and will help us to provide more of these videos to help you in your studies, your career, or with dealing with your own gifted child. Full information on this subject and all my other books and works can be found on my website, drpetermarshall.com. You can also access my many articles and advice designed to help you in your career by following me on LinkedIn by using the link linkedin/in/Dr. Peter Marshall, and a full account and explanation of my own professional development in weekly installments by following me on facebook.com/drpeter.marshall.35, and please don't forget to press the subscribe button.